Well, hello there and welcome to the bathroom of the dollhouse, where all the heavy thinking gets done. That's right, for another reading from The Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and you, Stelfers, for March 14th, the day of relativity. And here at the top of the page is a visual representational image of the day of relativity. We have us what appears to be, boom, it's a snare drum, I would reckon. I'm not a percussionist by any stretch of the imagination, with what appears to be a bed of sand as the head and a little palm tree growing out the top for all you audio listeners there. Right, that's it. Does that speak to the day of relativity there? Who's to say, all right? That said, oftentimes the visual representational image is rather enigmatic. But I just like folks to kind of see what's on the page in front of me since you aren't reading along, if you like. That said, not altogether all too important, not when it's March 14th. That's right, what's important around here is wishing you a happy birthday, if your birthday is March 14th. That said, maybe this video finds you late, and if that's the case, I just want to say I hope you had a happy birthday in that circumstance. But for everybody else joining us randomly, or more ideally to celebrate the March 14th birthday, I just want to say hello, welcome, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Now, before I dive in with the redirect, something I like to take a few minutes to do, and that is roll some dice. That's right, this is the DykASSt birthday broadcast, so I like to live up to the namesake. But if you've seen this before, you're not interested, you want to get right in with the read there, just advance ahead in the chapters. I'll be here rolling dice, because I do so more importantly for synchronicity's sake. And here I rolled, what is this? A 4 and a 3 for a 7. Now, what is synchronicity, you're probably wondering? Well, my friends, as I often hear it told, the universe or the higher powers that be will oftentimes put things in our path to help us realize our goals or manifest our aspirations. But we're often very laser or singular focused as we're getting on with life. You know, the commute, maybe running errands and the like. So we often have the blinders on to what's going on around us. Yeah, we may see the things that come into our path, but we might not lend them much credence. So we're apt to miss the things the universe is putting in our path. That said, this is a bit of an exercise to start dropping those blinders and recognizing what the universe is putting in front of us. And how do we do that? Well, we need some kind of mutually agreed upon sign with which the universe can communicate with us. That's right, your daily numbers there. Your 3 and your 4 for a 7. Now, you don't have to go with the numbers I rolled for you. The intention is there, but it's probably advisable you get your own set of dice so you can ascribe directional values to number sets and time limits with which to go in those directions. You're essentially letting the universe take the wheel and drive, all right? That said, once you've established such things, maybe pick a place near and dear to your heart or some place that you've never explored before and then set out. But like I said, get those blinders off, all right? Outside of your numbers creeping up all the time, you might start to see a little bit of a theme out in the world, all right? To say the universe will start directing things into your path or something you come across that you might otherwise not normally see, all right? Let's take the visual representational image, for instance. Say you might start seeing people playing drums everywhere. You know, it might be somebody on a bucket or whatever, or it might be you might see some imagery of drums or palm trees in places that you wouldn't otherwise see them. Who's to say? The theme can be anything, all right? I'm just using that as an example. That said, get out on your first leg of this journey, your first directional value, if you like, and at the end of your time limit, hey, maybe you're not seeing much of anything, all right? In such circumstances, just take it in stride. You know, sometimes it takes the universe time to get things going, I would argue, but maybe you step back, take a look around, and maybe you notice something small, like, hey, maybe your numbers creep up, all right? Maybe you're on 34th Street if you go with these numbers, or 7th Avenue maybe, or perhaps, hey, the number 7 bus pulls up in front of you, and maybe on the side of the bus there's an advertisement, and the advertisement, maybe the imagery is boom, it's that theme, all right? Maybe something crossed your path as you was walking down, like a salamander, say, and hey, there's a salamander on the advertisement. You get the idea. I would say that is an argument to be had to get on the bus. And maybe you just so happen to have perfect change to ride. But maybe, see, the bus pulls out. You took too long. You're a little too indecisive with as much. All right? I would say roll your dice and use that as the waypost to go in the direction of the bus. All right? Get your time limit going. See how long to follow it for. Maybe by the time you reach the end of your time limit, hey, maybe the bus has stopped. All right? It's there already. Maybe you rolled the snake eyes. There's only 2 minutes, so you caught up with it. Now you can get on the bus and ride, all right? And maybe no sooner you do that, all these people get off. Maybe some people get on, and you get on the bus, roll your dice for a time value, and maybe one of the people that got on there just so happens to be wearing a sports jersey with the number that you rolled, all right? I would say use that as an indication of maybe somebody to follow once they get off, or an opportunity for you to get off the bus, all right? That's when you should get off. I don't know. You got to go by instinct a little bit in these circumstances. That said, you find yourself following somebody, give them a little bit of a buffer. They're kind of acting as your white rabbit of sorts, and you don't want to spook them. But as I often like to say, hey, you know what? Maybe they notice that you're following them and they confront you about it. Such circumstances, or maybe just somebody's asking you what you're doing while you're rolling dice. Hey, show them this video, explain it to them. It's my birthday, I'm out here trying to shake things up, and you know what? It's very often apt that they will join you because they got nothing interesting going on either, all right? Or they're apt to tell you you're crazy, and you're probably apt to tell them, hey, you know what? It's this guy on the internet. It's not me. I'm just trying to shake things up. Hey, I'll take that on for you, all right? And that's okay. That said, if they do happen to join you, it's a great thing because as I hear it told, the more people who are focused on the same thing, you're apt to beget greater results. All right, so think you get it. Get out there, start stacking up coincidences or synchronicities, if you like. I think they're interchangeable, and I think you're apt to see, taste, touch, smell, intuit, maybe even hear just a little bit of the magic. All right, maybe the drums insofar as the auditory aspect there. And if you do notice such things, I think you understand why I brought it up for you. All right. That said, that's synchronicity in a nutshell. Let's get on with the read. Your month is March, your day is the 14th, your sign is 22 to 24 degrees Pisces of the Pisces III period specifically, and your quality and element is mutable water. Well, all right, March 14th, the day of relativity. Those born on March 14 tend to understand themselves in relation to others. Their position in a family or social group is tremendously important to them, and since it defines their role and gives structure to their daily lives. The theme of relativity, however, goes much further in their lives. Ideologically, they tend to be open to many approaches and thus find it difficult to be sympathetic to absolute points of view. And for March 14 people, changing their mind is a specialty. And even those born on this day who have adhered to a fixed set of principles for a lifetime will be open to examining and modifying them if the right set of circumstances arises. More highly evolved March 14 people are able to consider many different planes of existence simultaneously, whether emotional, physical, or spiritual. They are also interested in the relationship between the personal world, concerns of the here and now, it says in parentheticals, and the universal world, or unchanging, eternal principles, it also says in parentheticals. And most March 14 people do believe in some absolute principles, whether they be God, science, or humankind. But they can struggle a whole lifetime trying to define where they themselves stand. They recognize that even the simplest fact can be viewed from many sides. Everything depends on how you look at it. It again says in parentheticals. And thus can experience great frustration trying to reconcile their varying points of view. Because they like to remain independent and are usually not the first to rush to join a cause or ally themselves with a group, March 14 people must be careful that others don't take them for aloof or superior types. Though they have a fine sense of humor and are not afraid to express their opinions forcefully, they are somewhat wary where offering deeper friendship is concerned. And in their personal lives, March 14 people tend to be open, accepting, and tolerant, since they know that anyone may be right in a given situation, and that all outlooks should be considered. All right. What else do we have here? They do, however, have a tendency to idolize objects of affection who they are unable or unlikely to attain. And less highly evolved March 14 people often get themselves into trouble by playing favorites with their family, and are in general prone to indulging in relative evaluations where one person suffers by comparison to another. And the most successful born on this day, they evolve to a point where they can appreciate the merits of a given person or thing with less need for comparison. And they recognize both the sameness and difference of all living things, i.e., a person is a person like all other people on the one hand, but is a unique individual with distinct thoughts and feelings on the other. Well, all right, pretty unique birthday breakdown today. All right, a little bit of fence riding, if you like. I feel like this has come up before, but you know what? A lot of these things, these themes do tend to carry through in one fashion or another. And there's so many other days in the year, so I don't know. I'm a little bit of a fence rider myself, so maybe that's why it seems familiar. That said, this particular day, relatively hyper focused on the specific theme there within regards to that straight narrow line that you're riding. Don't know about relativity so much, but hey, you know what, a little shallow in certain regards sometimes. That said, I only make mention of that because sometimes these days are really rounded out. They'll talk about what you're like in a relationship, what you're maybe like as parents, even like as children. Sometimes they'll even lend a little bit of advice to parents of people born on the day. None of that was really here. They really just kind of focused in on the theme. So I kind of like folks to understand the different dynamics the book is apt to work with. Here you got the laser focus. So in any event, I often like to provide a little bit of a commentary on what we just read, kind of rehash things within context, or so that we have context moving forward, and also make comparisons with things that have come up in previous days and the period at large, also the book. So let's dive in, all right? March 14th, the day, relativity. You're apt to understand yourself in relation to others, the reading claims. Also to say your position in a social group helps define who you are and structures your lives. So people serve as an objective mirror, if you like, at least of a sort of kind there, to help you cultivate self-awareness, at least as far as I read it. But from outside sources, if you like, all right? Things coming in so that you can rise from within, I guess. A very novel approach to that particular kind of undertaking, I would say. Because it's personal work, but it's based from others. Pretty interesting. So it's also probably not as lonely as some of the other folks who are born in this period who experience that to no uncertain degree. They like to isolate themselves and branch out from there, all right? However, in this vein, the reading claims you're open to many different perspectives. And you may find it difficult to nail down specific points of view, which I hadn't considered in the moment as I was reading it, but it makes sense, I would say. So maybe there's too much input coming in and you haven't had the time to suss it out, if you like. But I suppose that's probably the fatal flaw in as much. But there's also a strength in that dynamic, I would say. You're receiving and assessing the information, or at least more information than others may be willing or able to process themselves, or are necessarily up to doing. What else do we have? And whilst you may never find yourself able to make definitive choices, considering sometimes all the choices may have their merits, I find it admirable that those things stay with and also shape you in your journey, long after others have probably already put such things to bed, if they even lent them credence in the first place. Which I would say is part of this frustrating mind-changing dynamic that they mentioned, the likes of which can extend to higher existential and universal/metaphysical concerns for the higher evolved born on this day, apparently. At least based on what the reading had to say, right? All told, I think this makes sense if you stay largely independent of the groups and the causes that they mentioned you may, dip a toe into, but, you don't take with you, which is a bit of a little bit expansion on the period at large. Some folks are very independent, others will dedicate themselves to a cause. So you got a little bit of that independent notion, which isn't too uncharacteristic for the latter part of this Pisces period. the very beginning, everybody was committed to a cause, and we've kind of started to gradually come out of that into more of an individualistic, independent kind of focus. But it takes time, like we said, to suss such things out for yourself, even if you have time for as much. All told, it's said that you may seem aloof also, a little bit superior in your behavior. Probably because people are looking to you for immediate responses, I would argue. All right? And you're taking time to think things through. I would say in this day and age, people aren't necessarily used to that. I think something might be a little off. So it could be as simple as that. And despite this, however, you're said to have a very decent sense of humor. So there's just more fuel to that particular fodder that, yeah, you're taking your time with it. You also, it said you express your opinion forcefully. So there's just even more additional fuel to that theory. Having said that, the reading claims you may be wary of offering deeper friendship, but conversely may idolize objects of unattainable affection. So a little bit of a metaphysical romanticism at odds with rational realism, I would argue. And if those kinds of disconnects weren't enough, you may get yourself into trouble with favoritism, it said, and personal evaluation of others, despite being that open, tolerant individual they said you were. All right. So such things may not sound like the greatest attributes, but for a life aimed at being rather rationally objective, I'd say such things are rather reassuring. All right, you got a dynamic. It makes you very specific and different. You're not just drilled down on one specific line of thinking, even if those attributes aren't necessarily pretty. All right. It gives you some depth, if you like, and it shows you aren't a robot. All right, and you just may, it just might help you also cultivate a bit more of that professional approach to yourself in figuring out that pursuit of self-awareness. All right, you know, we're human, we've got flaws. We need certain things to kind of ruminate on, right? If we're going to do the important work of self-reflection. So that said, pretty interesting dynamic birthday, even though it was relatively hyper-focused. Pretty interesting. And like I said, I'm a bit of a fence rider myself, try to take in as much as I can and be open. And so I wasn't born on this day, but I did have I don't know if sympathy is the right word. I definitely saw a bit of myself in this one here. So maybe more empathy, if you like. That said, that's been your birthday breakdown. So let's move on to your numbers and your planets. All right, a little bit of numerology and astrology in the bargain. Let's see what they have to say here. Those born on the 14th of the month are ruled by the number 5, as 1 plus 4 equals 5, and by the speedy planet Mercury, which confers strongly developed mental abilities. However, for March 14th people, Mercury's influence is shaped by Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, which makes for a marked sensitivity and an appreciation for surrounding stimuli, particularly with colors, smells, as well as sounds. And it is fortunate for March 14th people that the number 5 bestows a resilient character, which can recover quickly from the hard knocks of life. All right. This one was rather boilerplate in the ideas that they expanded upon, but they highly personalized it insofar as I think they had to sit down and actually write it out. Sometimes it's a copy-paste job through and through, and I don't think that was the case here for you. That said, let's dive back into the notes, see what I had to say, expand on it a little bit for you, because there was a lot they didn't say. All right. Number 5 in the speedy planet Mercury for quickness of thought and change, usually. But for you, ostensibly because you have to take your time with such things, perhaps, a strongly developed mental ability. Mercury is usually said to impart the recover quickly from the hard knocks of quality. So that right there is a little bit of a copy-paste job, rather boilerplate. But having said that, this entry makes a specific mention of how Mercury's influence is shaped by the planet Neptune, which is the watery planet of dreams and visions, and often lends to a concern for higher ideals as well as romanticism. And like I said, those higher ideals, they can either be more outwardly focused for like a cause or more inwardly focused. And The more, what do we got, ethereal versus the grounded, earthy concerns also comes up a lot of the times, which can be realized with a focus on the self or the higher causes. All right, and here for you, I would say it's a mix of the two, and it leans more individual. Some of these folks who are ruled by, say, two planets that are kind of more ethereal, they're just hyper focused on those head in the clouds kinds of ideas. All right, they don't necessarily venture down into the more rational, realistic, earthly matters, if you like. I don't know one way or the other if the Mercury is one of those more earthy kinds of planets. I think it is, considering you're more objective, and so it would kind of what do you call it? Create a little bit of a schism between the two elements there. So I think it probably speaks to a little bit more individualism as well. What else do we have here? But with Mercury, also apparently there's an interesting influence there with Neptune, they mentioned. And there's also bakes in a sensitivity to stimuli, interestingly, in addition to a purported resilient character. Neptune is also said to impart a magnetic influence that breaks down absolute natures, also rigid natures. So all told, I'd say that lines up with the breakdown very well. They didn't necessarily say that you were too magnetic. They said you could be a little bit, they didn't say standoffish outright, but you know what, I think that kind of goes in there with aloof. Some folks think you're a little bit too superior. You've just got like this cold exterior, if you like. That usually, excuse me, only presents with Saturn, but in that dynamic, the person's very warm of heart, and they said that that was the case with you with that fine sense of humor there. It's just maybe you're too mentally quick for other people. Too many things going on for you to focus on what's being projected. But folks just need to get to know you before they realize, that's just the facade, if you like. So in any event, hopefully you took a little bit more value than the quick, fast, down and dirty that they presented with the numbers and planets. Before we move on to your tarot. All right, your tarot. One of the more eclectic of the New Age metaphysical ideologies, but hey, it's here in the book. Oftentimes we can make connotations with things that have come up in the breakdown. Sometimes not, but hey, we just have to find out. And if this is something you don't want to lend any credence, hey, let's just hear it, see if we can make the connections. Then we can leave it in the book. It doesn't mean we got to go home and start dealing out the cards to predict our future, however they're used. So that said, let's dive in. The 14th card of the major arcana is Temperance. The figure shown is a guardian angel who protects us and keeps us on an even keel. And the card cautions against all forms of egotistical excess. Positively seen, Temperance modifies passions in order to allow for new truths to be learned and incorporated into one's life. And because Temperance may indicate negative qualities of passivity and ineffectiveness, March 14th people should work on establishing certain absolute principles which they believe in strongly and stick to them. All right, they buttoned this one with some pretty interesting advice for you. They don't often do that. So they personalize the tarot for you. They personalize the numbers and planets. Hey, you know what? Good workout in the bargain there. A lot of times they don't do that. That said, what did I have to say about the tarot card? All right, here we go. Temperance for a promotion of balance and quite apt for someone measuring their choices and their stimuli. All right, and a caution against egotistical excess, which one could interpret you're having a capacity toward if you leaned in on your strengths of personal indulgence, perhaps. I don't know. We're just kind of spitballing it here. But for a measured approach, which the breakdown seems to convey, I would argue, there's the allowance of new traits to be learned and incorporated. So the card speaks to the breakdown right down the line, I would argue, compared to some of the other cards that may have presented. And this leaves room for you to cultivate absolute principles to stand by. Something it sounded like you struggled with, so I'm glad they brought this up. And sometimes the card can serve as an example of some prospect to live up to. And I would say the lion's share of the book, they didn't really explore that. And it was a couple weeks ago they brought it up for the first time. I was like, that's very interesting. I hadn't approached it in that respect. I don't know anything about the tarot cards, about how they're supposed to be used, but so I'm kind of learning as I go with the book. And so when they brought that up, I was like, oh, wish I'd known that from the beginning. It'd give me a different dynamic to explore. But by and large, these cards seem to speak to the day. It's only once in a blue moon, if you like, where they say this serves as an example of something to live up to. In any event, what else I have to say? So cultivate those absolute principles to stand by, they said. Even if that absolute principle is to have a fence to ride and be subject to changing one's mind from, I would argue. All right. So that said, that's been your tarot. Let's move on to your health. All right. Most March 14 people have a natural tendency to nurture and provide. And since they are family oriented, they will usually be concerned about the health of other family members and not infrequently take an interest, or a strong interest rather, in medicine and the healing arts. They must beware of worrying too much or nagging others, however, about such matters. They themselves are prone to problems with fluid retention as well as circulation, particularly in their feet as they get older. And March 14th people can make excellent cooks, and they often find the kitchen, therefore, an important creative outlet in their lives and a social focus for most evenings. And since they tend to be relaxed and comfort-loving, some March 14 people find it difficult to summon the discipline necessary to institute a daily or weekly program of exercise. Particularly recommended are milder forms of physical activity such as walking and swimming. All right, pretty interesting. I would have thought the exercise would be a little bit different for you, but we'll get into why that is here shortly. Let's dive back into the notes, all right? You're apt to be nurturing and be concerned for your family's health and your own, the way I read it, which is surprising, as I thought you might neglect your own based on how previous days have kind of carried that through line through there. So these things have been vacillating in this period quite a bit. So I didn't know where they were going to land with this one. For whatever reason, I thought you might neglect it. I've been wildly wrong with that particular prediction there. So, but hey, you know what? I wasn't born yesterday, which was the day of fateful prediction. So you know what? March 13th, people probably would have got it right. So in any event, you might, it vacillates wildly here, like I said. So this is a novel day for the period, especially if you nag others about their health. All right, that hasn't come up before. Fluid retention, on the other hand, that's come up once before, I believe. But a concern for circulation in the feet, that's a new but welcome recommendation or observation, considering that is a body area for the Pisces individuals, the feet and the toes. But they don't often bring it up. They typically bring up avoiding dairy because the lymphatic system is the other body area for Pisces. And so you don't want to build up that mucus. But that might also lend to the fluid retention in no small part. Who's to say? I hadn't thought about that till just now. But it was interesting that it only came up one other day, if that's the case. That said, the dairy not mixing well with the lymphatic system, other Pisces body area. Cooking for social aspects with the diet. Cooking's come up quite a bit this period. It also, all the way back to Capricorn, it started presenting quite a bit. Normally they drill down, very hyper-focused on specific foods that kind of may ground you if you're someone who tends to have their head in the clouds. At least that's the through line I tend to see with how they determine the specific foods recommended. What else do we have here to say? Summoning discipline is new. Also, mild exercise for a recommendation is interesting, considering Mercury is a fast mover. And it's also, it tends to find a lot of people born on this day as adventure seekers who have to avoid danger a lot of times. So Neptune must soften this to some extent if we're to go by the planets lending any kind of influence on such things. Who's to say? I'm not an astrologer, so that's up for you to salt to taste, but pretty interesting in those respects. That having been said, that's your health, so let's move on to some advice. All right, here we go. Be more demanding of yourself as far as your personal development is concerned. Interesting. It sounded to me like you had a handle on that based on the breakdown. Evolve into the best person you can be, all right? And beware of withholding love from some people whilst lavishing it on others, all right? And try to be at ease with certain basic principles. All right. Hey, they went right down the line for you today. They addressed all the things that came up in the breakdown in no small part. They do that sometimes, get a little bit redundant, but you know what? I think they do so because they feel like it's something that needs addressed once again. Sometimes we have to hear things 38, 39 times before we finally caught into what people are trying to tell us. Or we got to hear it in all these different, unique ways before something finally hits. So I think a lot of times that's what they're trying to do. In the event, what did I have to say about what they had to say? Here we go. They said, demand more of your personal development. It did seem to be, what do I say here, starkly different from your professional approach, the personal side of things. See, fared typical with the schisms that Neptune seems to be imparting on the people born in this period. So yeah, you got the professional life, the personal life, and that schism in between. So I think they're trying to help you bridge that. Be more demanding of yourself on the personal side of things. Evolve into the best person that you can. Reinforces an idea I got that is somewhat baked into your nature. All right, being mindful of as much is good to hear and keep you on the ball. All right. Be the best person you can. Tell you know, maybe you're really great in the professional side, and maybe you're not so great on the personal side. Yeah, maybe we got to find a synthesis or where the disconnect is. Who's to say? What else do they have to say? Let's see. Beware of withholding love from some, but lavishing it on others. It was an interesting dynamic, for sure. All right, ostensibly built on historical precedent, I would guess. I don't know where that would come from otherwise. But holding out for your illusions versus seeing what's there right in front of you, I think is what they're trying to get at. One of the most uncommon or uncharacteristical elements in the breakdown, I would say, all things being told. Seems to be a little bit of a rug pull, if you like. Sometimes we start getting into this hyper-focused theme, like, okay, what else is this going to expand out into? And then they'll do a quick pivot onto some other thing that seems totally unrelated, and I would say that was one of them. They said try to be at ease with certain basic principles. So have something to hold firm, all right? You don't always have to be on the fence, but maybe that's the thing you hold firm to, that fence, all right? Also, just because we don't like what's true doesn't mean it isn't, all right? Doesn't mean we shouldn't hold out for what's disproven about it. Because in the meantime, what can we learn from as much? What can we develop in ourselves? And we may not like that absolute truth, but hey, it might help us out in knowing certain terms in other areas. So find something to hold on to. Any event, that's what I had to say about the advice. I felt like I was a little bit, incoherent there at certain points, not making my points, but you know what? That's how it goes sometimes. Even though I proofread my notes and go back over them, you never know what's going to happen. That said, that's been the advice. Let's move on to your meditation. That's right. It's your birthday. You get something else to think about or pontificate on, if you like. That's why we're here in the bathroom. All right, even though I say it in every other room of the dollhouse. That said, your meditation, we are at once the same and worlds apart. All right, interesting. Don't know what to make of that, but once again, we are at once the same and worlds apart. All right. That's your birthday, your meditation. I'm not going to try to throw my spin on it or my interpretation of as much. It wouldn't benefit you, I don't think. And like I said, I don't have an interpretation of it in this respect today. Sometimes it comes to me right at the end, but nope, not today. That being said, that's your meditation. So let's move on to your strengths and your weaknesses. That's right. Let's hold up the objective mirror, see where you got the girth and where maybe otherwise a little more atrophied within the metaphor. Your strengths, you're accepting, you're flexible, and you're affectionate. Interesting, very interesting. Must be that nurturing aspect there in the health. But your weaknesses, what do we got here for your weaknesses? You're indecisive, complacent, and non-committal. Oh, those ones are ugly. Those ones are difficult there. All right. Oftentimes I like to make a case that our strengths are going to help us improve on our weaknesses. You know, assuming there's something that even need improved upon. You know, what does the book know, right? That said, I also like to make the case that our weaknesses can be strengths. It just depends on the situation and the individual and how they're using them. There was one day that was like 2-3 months back, and impulsive came up as a strength. The very next day, it traded to a weakness. It's like, where's the disconnect? How can a few minutes or, hours of, being born from apart from somebody make a difference? Like I said, I just think it's the situations there oftentimes. That said, how are our strengths going to help us overcome our weaknesses? You're accepting. You know what I would say? You're going to understand what the problem is, and you're just going to accept it. A lot of other people, they live in denial for a long time over such things, and then what happens from that? It's just however long they're in denial, that's time they can't use to improve upon it. But if you're accepting of it, hey, we can get right in on it. Also, there's a strength in being accepting of something. You take a little bit of ownership of it. You're being flexible. How does that help us with our weaknesses? Hey, you know what? Hey, if something's happening, we can kind of bend to it. We can kind of figure out how to wrap our minds around it too, all right? Open ourselves up to different ideas and how to figure things out. This thing's not bending this way. Hey, we got to take a different approach. We got to pivot if you like, all right? Pull the rug out on the problem, maybe. I don't know. But there again, that's a strength. And you're affectionate. How is that a strength? Hey, you know what? Sometimes we need somebody to help us out in this life with our weaknesses or just anything in general. And if you're affectionate to folks, hey, you know what? They're probably going to return it to you also. And maybe you can bring them into the fold and help you just improve upon your weaknesses there. And also, so with Neptune, you got that magnetic influence that helps dissolve rigid and absolute natures. You're going to help draw people in, even if they first have to get past that aloof exterior they were talking about. Who's to say? But they said that social dynamic for you was huge in helping cultivate self-awareness. Again, there you go. I'd say that some affection is baked into that process in no small part. But what's the case to be made for your weaknesses being strengths? This was a tough one. Indecisive, complacent, noncommittal. Typically, I go on the fly. This one, I didn't think I could do it. So I would say with noncommittal, strength of that one, hey, you know what? People are going to leave you alone if you're not committing to anything. And in such respects, you can start focusing on things. You have time to yourself. I know that's probably an ugly way to approach doing as much, but hey, you know what? It's a strength in those respects, I would assume. You're complacent. Complacent was a tough one for me. How can that be a strength? You're not getting anything done. You're letting things fly by. You know what? Complacency can also serve as a time for us, or a watermark, if you like, to say, once I start getting complacent, now I know I need to change up that dynamic. Start learning new things, branching out into new areas so that we can put that to bed until those things get a little bit boilerplate, all right? And then you know it's time to once again move on. So keep building ourselves up. So complacency can be a strength in that respect, I would say. Use it as a watermark. Also, indecisiveness, how can that be a strength? Well, you know what? It gives you an opportunity to be balanced, measured with what you're dealing with, all right? Hey, you're not going to commit to this thing. I need a decision right now. You know what? Do we? There's all the time in the world oftentimes. People just add a little bit too much fuel to the fire, thinking things need done right now. And if they do need done right now, are they that important to you? I don't know. It's up to you to figure out, all right? This is your birthday. But that said, you're a measured individual. That's just baked into the bargain there, I would say. And so if you're indecisive with things, hey, lean into it, just being an opportunity for you to flesh out your thoughts a little bit more. That said, I think I understand where they're coming from. Maybe you're not, they brought up those absolute principles. You're not drilling down on anything specific. So if you've got those baked into the bargain already, you know what, I wouldn't feel so bad about being indecisive with other things. I just need more time to cook on it, all right? So I can get that bake nice and good, all right? We want that good crumb in the bake, all right? We don't want it doughy, all right? So that said, metaphor aside with the baking, we're not in the kitchen, we're in the bathroom, baby. That's been your strengths and your weaknesses. All right, so with your strengths and weaknesses in the can, let's move on to those born on this day. And when we get into those born on this day, something I like to do is use it as an opportunity to try and drum up some inspiration for figuring out our passions. Too often in life, I get out and meet folks, ask them what they do, and more importantly, if they like it, and a lot of times they don't, all right? And I think it's just that they got out of school, right into a job to make ends meet, because they needed that money immediately to pay for the rent and, the diapers on the baby, whatever the case may be. And so the fatal flaw is the job they got into had nothing to do with anything that they had value for, all right, outside of them greenbacks. So if anything I can wish for someone on their birthday, it's that they're chasing after something fulfilling, something that they're doing backflips out of bed to get into every day, all right, something to chase after, if you like. And that can be a hard prospect because it takes time, energy, and commitment, all right. Noncommittal, they said. Ooh, might be a tough prospect for you. But hey, you know what? Get into those born on this day. You get to see what lottery you drew, who shares your company, and that can be interesting in those respects too. So in any event, hey, you know what? At the very least, I'm putting the bug in your ear about as much, and I think there's value in that. So let's get in on those born on this day and hopefully drum up some inspiration for you. All right, we're starting off with Albert Einstein. Oh, he may have influenced the title today, the Day of Relativity. Probably. All right, a German Jewish American Nobel Prize winning theoretical physicist and also a mathematician and advanced notions of space and time through the relativity theory. We also have Paul Ehrlich, a German Nobel Prize winning immunologist, a founder of modern chemotherapy as well. Victor Emmanuel II, the first king of United Italy. The first king, yeah, that's what it says, of United Italy. And it says Sardinian king. We also have Frank Borman, a U.S. astronaut and an airline executive. And believe it or not, it's like every astronaut was born in this period, except maybe like Neil Armstrong, because I've just been coming across a bunch of them. So it's pretty interesting in that respect. Head in the clouds, Neptune kind of rulership, perhaps. All right. George Philip Telemann, a German composer and the most prolific composer of all time, it says. We also have Quincy Jones, a jazz trumpeter, keyboardist, arranger, composer, band leader, producer, and record executive. And you know what? Yesterday I argued might be the day of the musician. It looks like today is getting a little bit of that theme as well. So there's another Neptune thing, perhaps. Musicians. We also have Diane Nemirov-Arbus, a photographer, portraitist of strange people, it says. Interesting. The name again was Diane Nemirov-Arbus. Go see you some strange people on the internet there. We also have Michael Caine, the film actor, Sylvia Beach, the Paris publisher and owner of Shakespeare and Company bookstore, and the first to publish James Joyce's Ulysses. Interesting. We also have Johann Strauss Sr., the Australian composer and conductor, another musician. We also have Billy Crystal, the comedian, entertainer, and film actor. Osa Helen Leidy Johnson, an explorer, Leidy Johnson, rather. An explorer and a filmmaker. We also have Max Schulman, a comic novelist and responsible for The Feather Merchant. We also have Robert Rimmer, a writer of That Girl from Boston. Hank Ketchum was a cartoonist, might still be, of Dennis the Menace fame. Bertrand Blier, a French filmmaker and responsible for My Best Friend's Girl, and Rita Tushingham, a British film, stage, and TV actress. And we also have Kirby Puckett, Minnesota Twins baseball outfielder, and says led the team to 2 World Series titles. And Casey Jones, the fabled 19th century train engineer. Well, if he was fabled, how did he have a birthday? Interesting. It must be in the poem or story, perhaps. We also have Tessa Sanderson, a British Olympic gold medal winning javelin thrower. And I think this is the first time they threw in a fictional character, or at least a fabled one. So that's I don't know, that's an anomaly. I don't know where they're coming from with that. But maybe look them up. Old Casey Jones, who's to say. That said, I know it's a big-ass tall order to take inspiration from other people's accomplishments, but like I said, anything to help drum up some inspiration, start chasing after your passions, all right? I think it's important that we're out there driving after such things, finding fulfillment in life. But if you already got something like that in your life and you're making it financially viable, well, hey, then the hat that I'm not wearing is off to you. That said, I butchered some names there, so let's make up for it on my side of things. It's not done in malice, it's just hooked on phonics. Doesn't work for me with names oftentimes. Even words also, as you probably noticed in the read. That said, that essentially rounds out your birthday reading. Except to say your season is winter, your sign once again is Pisces, of the Pisces III period specifically, and your quality and element is mutable water. And this has been March 14th, the day That's right, of relativity. The day of the drum with the sand and a mini palm tree in the drum on the head there. From the Secret Language of Birthdays by Gary Goldschneider and Hugh Stelfers. I have an affiliate link for this book down in the description, right above a personal message I like to put together for the birthday boys and girls. So check out the message if you're interested. And pick up the book if you need some help with your cocktail parties or whatever, that social group you bring in. You know, maybe you're not someone who likes to get up there and get the party started. This thing's going to help you in those respects. And even if you are, hey, maybe you want to take some of the heavy lifting off your shoulders for once in a while, the book's going to get it done, all right? So that's how it was introduced into my life, and I feel like I'm all the better for it. That said, book having been relayed, what's important around these here parts, like I said at the top, wishing you a happy birthday. So once again, happy birthday. And for everybody else who joined us randomly or more ideally to celebrate, I just want to say I hope you enjoyed yourselves, took something to value even though it's not your birthday, and that we see you for your birthday reading. All right, and lest I forget before I take us out here, your daily numbers. All right, get out there and let the universe show you it's with you on your path. See, taste, touch, smell, hear, intuit, just a little bit of the magic. You understand why I brought it up. And you should be doing something fun on your birthday, I reckon, all right? So, or making up for it if I missed your presence there. That's it once again. I just want to say happy birthday, all right? And thank you for the pleasure of your time. It was a privilege to celebrate your birthday with you, all right? Take care of yourself. Find an absolute tenant or whatever they said to drill down on, all right? And take care of your feet and toes and try to retain that water, all right? Okay, once again, happy birthday. Take care of yourselves.